All right, so before I introduce our guest, we're doing kind of an impromptu stream. I'm working on some stuff that I usually don't stream while I'm working on, but I found that like Adam and I have been chatting like on Facebook for a bit, and then I think we were both kind of lurking in Jeff's live stream,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jeff Lafferty, who everybody should check out. And so we were having a really interesting conversation, and he did a scathing review of Jacob's
Scathing.
apartment,
Yes.
which is hilarious because like weirdly enough, I've like from his review, it's like it's interesting, but I felt like he actually totally understood Jacob's apartment. And so it's like it's an interesting conversation to have. And I also think like we were getting into some really interesting conversations about our theories on art and some of the ideas that Adam has for like future stories that I don't want to
Yeah.
share. I don't think a lot of that you're going to want to share online,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Anything on
yeah,
that
yeah,
magnum opus project, I do want to
yeah.
kind of keep under wraps. But
Mm-hmm.
with you privately, I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about that like off stream or something. But it was an interesting conversation. I think we were both like, we're both up. Like, honestly, I'm gonna get like the thing I'm doing. It's hard to kind of split my focus, but my focus was already split, and I'm slightly autistic, so like I have to go with it. I'm like, okay, my focus is a little split, so I'm gonna split it the best and most productive way I can. If you guys are watching live, just so you know, this is Adam Lore joining us, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so like I'm gonna kind of I guess I'll start it off by well, I don't know, maybe we should start it off by like, do you have like a summary of the review, or
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
I
Let me
should
see.
summarize it to see if I
Well, I
understood it
could
because
because
I
this is the
liked
thing.
it.
Is like I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
feel like by the end of doing the review and then talking to you, it's like I may have like come to a slightly different
Oh,
perspective. Like I feel like I need to
interesting.
do a second look at the book and then do like a second like
I
just
think like the thing is, it's a sad book. Like so that's
yeah.
for anybody watching this. I mean, the trailer's super sad. The fact that I'm calling it a doomed romance, like, but I think I do craft it in a way where you're going to be sad. Like you're going to be sad when you finish it.
It's supposed to make you feel like shit
And if you don't
afterwards.
feel sad, like I feel like I haven't kind of done my job because I'm kind of weaving threads that are supposed to pay off, and they do, but they don't in the way you want them to because I know how to structure a story. Like at least that's my theory on it. I like to think I know. So like to me, the one thing I don't want people to get out of it is like total hopelessness or something like that. But
See, that's kind
um,
of what I can't. I mean, it didn't make me feel personally hopeless, but it's like that
yeah.
was the message I got from this. So that's why I want to reread it because I feel like
Well, it'll leave you with
it's
that
kind of
though a little
almost
bit,
like an argument against hopelessness in a way, right? It's kind of like
a little
showing,
bit. Yeah,
but I
it's kind of so. Well, go ahead, Adam. I'm cutting you off. I tend to cut people off, and I don't
that's
want to
right
do that.
because you were kind of giving your kind of summary first. So go ahead.
So my take on your read was you liked the book, like the structure of it and stuff like that, but you
The
just kind of
artwork,
like it bummed
especially.
you out. Like the story bummed you out.
Yeah, like on a philosophical level, I strongly disagree with the way you, like your approach to storytelling. Like, in other words, your philosophy of storytelling in this book, at least insofar as what I took away from it when I first read it, is absolutely antithetical to what I believe in.
Yeah,
And
me
I've
too.
already and I've also come to the conclusion with stuff like by Charlie Kaufman, who's my favorite director, who's
Yeah,
done like
mine too.
two movies where it's like I'm never gonna watch these movies again. I hate them. They're brilliant works of art. It's like the best movie ever made, but I
Yeah,
can't. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to watch this.
yeah,
Why would someone make this that makes you feel so awful?
yeah.
I
It's
don't get it, but I feel like you guys are advanced where you like it's like I feel like you are wiser than me and I might
no,
eventually figure that out.
no,
But right
Adam.
now I feel like I
I think
can't
you're
understand why someone would do that.
Yeah, I think you're a very intelligent person, and I think that you and I have something in common because we're both overthinkers, and so the fact that we
Hmm.
both overthink it probably leads to like all sorts of anxieties and depressions and all sorts of craziness. Like honestly, because that's just a byproduct of overthinking, and it's like I think that there's two different kind of people with overthinkers. There's people like I tend to be more the type of person who like when I was in the thick of sort of like the worst of my depression, and whenever I kind of feel depressed, if I listen to like Elliott Smith, which is like the
Yes.
epitome of depression. I mean, he was writing music that was so confessional, and obviously like as tragic as his outcome was, nobody was like shockingly surprised by it because he was so like just his music was so much about that. like um but
Right.
I get encouragement from that. Like weirdly enough, like it brings me joy that I like to know that someone's expressing that thing. And I know people who can't even go there. And I think both
Yeah.
are really relevant calls. Um so like again, like I wouldn't want my book like to be causing somebody like mass anxiety or depression, but do I want them to feel sad for the characters? Yes. And do I want them to feel kind of the meaninglessness of like the choices that the characters have made? For sure. So it's like
But why
it's
though?
this
But
weird
this.
thing.
So my question is, once you get to the end of this,
Yeah.
and you do feel the meaningless of the characters, and you do feel all that, why do you want to create something that makes someone have that feeling? If that's the end, that's why I like the idea that this is sort of a prequel, a sort of like spiritual precursor to two stories, where it's like this gets to more of a positive message.
So
Or am I
like
misreading even that?
so I have a really good friend who taught English. I might have had this conversation with you. Like, he's a really good writer too. He's like writes way better selling books than me. He writes like theological books now, but he used to be like in like underground hip hop bands and not like under respected ones like that are sold at Christian bookstores or anything. But he
Oh
was a
yeah.
Christian who did hip hop. He just they were like legit respected in like at least the LA like underground scene.
Oh
And then
wow.
he went on to get his doctorate in English, and now he teaches at like Oklahoma Baptist University to a bunch of students who don't believe he did hip hop at some point because he's like this weird kind of he wears like suits and like anyhow you can
Yeah,
check out
yeah.
his stuff. He's a writer named Alan Noble, but and he writes great books. He has a great book out right now called You Are Not Your Own, and it's like outselling like C.S. Lewis in like
Oh
which is
wow.
insane. Like that, this is a guy we used to play in punk bands together, like when we were both like young and stupid and doing a lot of stupid things,
Yeah, that
in
sounds awesome.
like this crappy desert town. It's kind of anyhow. I'm proud of the guy, but he told me a story once when he was first adjuncting English. He was teaching The Great Gatsby,
Hmm.
and after class one day, like a wild evangelical student kind of went up to him and like was kind of witnessing to his poor lost atheist self because he was teaching The Great Gatsby. And my friend
Okay.
was like at that point like a very religious Christian, like who was like heavily like, what are you talking about, dude? Like he's like, you're not like, you think because I'm teaching The Great Gatsby I'm an atheist? Like he's like, he was like, do you understand like the core? So anyhow, he put this in a way that I think kind of explains the type of work that I try to make. But it's like,
Mm.
if you're truly talking about like faith of any sort, um especially Christianity, and this is a belief I have,
Of course.
and you're
Yes.
not doing it in the evangelical bubble. Like there's this whole kind of Christian industrial complex,
Sure.
that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like to call it. And by saying this, by the way, I get no advantages in my career. Like this puts me in like weird positions, with publishers that publish me, and it puts me in weird positions with like Christian publishers who don't want to touch anything I do because I write
Absolutely. Yeah.
about this stuff. So the thing is like the whole arc, like hypothetically, if you believe what I believe, it all hinges on the fact of like there is this absence of God that we feel because we've broken our relationship with God. And so that
Oh, is that
leads,
like sort of the message of your book?
well, not necessarily the message of this book, but the point is like a book like The Great Gatsby does more to point people to God than like a
Huh.
freaking Thomas Kincaid painting that's
I don't. Well,
pretending
I
the
don't know
world.
enough about like the. I haven't read Gatsby, so I don't know the whole. Like I know
Well, even the
the.
movie could be like an example. It's like the point being like the whole purpose of The Great Gatsby. Like it's a great book, but it's like it's a sad book. It's showing a really wealthy man who's kind of pursued everything on this earth and like still is unfulfilled and has
Yeah. Okay.
unrequited
Okay.
love and emptiness, right?
Okay.
And it ends in like sorrow and horror. Like it doesn't have like a happy ending.
Right.
It's like a warning sign for like people that like, wealth is not the only pursuit. And it wasn't written by a Christian. But the thing is, like, a book like that does more to show the need for a solid belief system than like a Thomas Kincaid painting does to like guide people to God, where it's like if we're in a world that's like fluffy and like everything's lovely and death really isn't that bad and like these things aren't horrible like that we have to
Yeah.
experience from like birth to death, and we aren't all kind of eventually facing this death thing, then like what is the whole weight of like the sacrifice that Christ gave, like in my theory, right, like of what I believe is true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like if you take away total depravity, like, so this was it's a crazy idea, but it's like what's his name, now I'm blanking out, I'm too like split distractions with what I'm doing. um uh oh my gosh, I'm blanking out
Oh
on his name.
shoot.
the
So
the the old like Catholic philosopher of like who was one of the first religious writers, and I'm blanking out on his name. Starts with an A and I'm blanking. Oh, Augustine.
okay.
Augustine.
Yeah.
Okay, so Augustine wrote about like the idea of total depravity being like fundamental to like a Christian's belief system, and it's so weird because it's like all evangelicals, all the fluffy like YouTube evangelicals, like most fluffy.
I
I'd like to call it like fluffy Republic Christians.
maybe just you use fluffy Christians, and we
No,
know.
I'll say Republic Christians because like
Oh, Republic Christians. Okay.
yeah. So it's
I
like
didn't realize that that's what you had said.
so Christianity, like there's a version of Christianity that's been co-opted by a
Okay.
political party.
A lot of
Um,
it. A lot of it.
yeah, and it's also been co-opted by like these kind of strange traditions of like churches that like censor books, like they bleep out cuss words, they like don't talk openly about death, like we don't
Sure.
talk about dark things, but we're okay with like getting really like politically toxic to like small minorities of people. Like they have this like really negative depiction of what Christianity is, and or like a too positive depiction, like where it's like I remember watching. Sorry, this gets me on a rant because it's something
No,
I'm
no.
very
Keep.
passionate
You
about.
go ahead as long as you want.
So I remember watching this this movie that was like God is Not Dead or something, and I watched this when I was an
Okay. Yeah.
atheist, right? And I thought it was the funniest movie I had ever seen in my life, like as an atheist. And I remember a Christian suggesting it, and I was like, I just thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Like, I don't know if you've watched that movie, but it is really funny.
I haven't watched it, but I've like heard a lot about it. People
It's got
talk a
like the
lot
guy
about
who
it.
played Hercules, who's in all these bad movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like and like the premise was like this evil atheist professor like has his like students in class, and he's like, just nonstop just proving atheism to his poor, students who don't dare speak up, and he just belittles like a Christian in the class, and there's a Christian who's a little afraid to stand out, but then he has the courage and he speaks up in class and debates his professor and shuts him down and proves him wrong. And it's like the whole movie is clearly written by somebody who's never been to college, like never had a professor who was an atheist. Like it's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's like the depiction is like the whole movie should just be called Atheist Straw Man.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was almost gonna say straw man, but I think you've already. I think I'm just thinking of that because you've already depicted it in that way in an earlier conversation.
Yeah, so
Like
it's like
it sounds like just a total straw man of
it's
someone
funny.
else's position.
It's really funny because you watch the
Almost
movie,
like a Saturday Night Live skit version
you watch the movie and you don't get a depiction of reality or anything like that. You just get a depiction of what like somebody who's like lived in a weird evangelical bubble that, at a house that has Thomas Kincaid paintings and like Home Sweet Home with a Bible verse like all over their, you know, like window and never actually read the Bible. Like most of these people haven't even read the Bible.
Yeah, that's a
And
problem.
but they've watched like all the Christian movies, they've listened to Christian radio, they watch all the Christian YouTubers who, like, you're familiar with some of them. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get you into any more of that drama.
Right, right. No, I know which ones you're talking about.
But I'm not a fan of these people because they're not like they don't even like theologically hold up for what they believe. Like there's just so many holes in what they claim. Like, and a lot of it's just like disproving evolution, which has literally nothing to do with like Christ. it's just insane. So anyhow, my point is there's all this insanity, and I'm a person who's saved, and I don't like groupthink. I don't like basilicas that like reinforce like different hierarchical structures. There's a lot of things I don't like that I learned I don't like when I was an atheist, and I still don't like as a Christian. Like, and I don't think Christ liked those things in the Bible. Like, I don't think Christ liked money lenders at the temple. Um, I don't think he liked hypocrites kind of pretending they were without sin. And like, there's all sorts of stuff like that. Anyhow, sorry, rambling. You still there? Oh no, I think I lost Adam. I think we lost Adam. Oh well. Anyhow, my whole purpose
Sorry, I was listening, but I just walked away for just a second.
Oh no worries. We're streaming anyway, so it's cool. You can.
I'll be right here in the room, but I just need to grab something. So I'm still listening to everything you say.
Yeah. So anyhow, like the basic gist of it is, I think that it's the duty of artists to depict truth, and I as a Christian, I think even more so. And I don't think that has to be the kind of truth I'm depicting where it's like really like slice of life or autobiographical or anything like that. But I think the core of great art is truth. And I think that Christians who are waxing over truth to kind of bubble wrap the world where it doesn't have any sharp points are kind of becoming the same kind of fragile, like woke type culture that quite a lot of people in that circle would criticize. Like, they criticize other people for being woke, but at the same time they listen to like hip hop that takes out the bad words. Like, it's like the weirdest thing, because it's like they're worried about like the fragility of everyone. And like that just makes for people with no real faith, because they don't know the hedge or like the whole foundation of their belief system. And it also just makes for really shitty stories. So it's like, I'd rather tell stories that really try to depict, especially if I'm going to get into like slice of life, I want to depict what life is really like. I want to be as true to experience as I can, because for me, I don't think anything else reflects God. So I literally think if you watch God Is Not Dead, that's converting the converted, and half those people really actually might need to be sincerely converted, because most of them are just like in a social club. But it's like, I don't think that does any better to point somebody a window to look for God, or at least start philosophically thinking about like deeper things than just like this minimal time we have here, whether it's Christianity or whatever philosophy. It doesn't do anything to point anyone anywhere. It just basically gives Christians something to high five each other like in a big mega church,
So can I ask you?
So my point is.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I think,
please finish.
To wrap it, why I brought up Great Gatsby. Great Gatsby is more of a witness to God, and it's written by a non-Christian. It's more of a witness to God and the goodness of God and the need for God than any like crazy, like Christian fiction book that you're going to see on the Christian bookshelf. And so that's kind of my theory on art as a Christian, but also just as a non-Christian. I'm just moved. Like, my point is, even if I were a non-Christian, it's like I'm still moved. Like, there's always been something about stories that ring true, whether they're sorrowful. And this is the part I was trying to kind of explain in text, whether they're sad and they're getting at that like pull, like just that sad, just horror of like reality. And you just kind of like, you don't know why you appreciate these movies that are super like, I don't know why I love The Graduate, and the fact that the ending's kind of fulfilling and then it has this like meh moment, and I think that's genius, and yet I can't watch it too often, but I love it. And like, but at the same time, I get that same feeling when I see something like truly beautiful, or like see something really hilarious, and then I have this feeling afterwards, like, man, it's almost like this moment where I'm close to something and then it's gone. there's something like that in beauty and sad and depressing stuff and humor, and all good art I think relies on truth. And I think that like bad art skips truth, like bubble wraps the world.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's really just honestly bad art is woke art, and like a lot of that's like made by people who complain about woke art, because it's like they're like, we have to bubble wrap our stories, so we can't mention anything sad, anything political, anything true to life. It just needs to be pure escapist fiction. And it's like, don't get me wrong, that's okay, but that is a bubble wrapped world, and that is a very like woke approach to art, you know. I don't know
So
if that makes sense.
would you say that that Jacob's apartment? I keep wanting to call you Jacob now because it's like I
It's
keep
okay.
getting.
I had an
You,
interviewer at TCAT
yeah,
who
yeah.
was like, "So Jacob," and I was like, "I get it," because like it does seem, and that
I
makes
keep.
me proud, because it's like I think people may be surprised by like the parts that are fictional and the parts that aren't.
So
Yeah.
can I ask you two quick questions about this book
Yeah.
without trying to reveal any of the spoilers or
Well, I
anything?
also went on a really long rant, so you feel free to also like kind of explain your thoughts on the book and stuff like that, and
Well,
you
in
know,
terms of really long,
yeah.
when you're talking to Adam Lore, 20 minutes is not really long.
This is true. This is true.
That is a brief
That's
discussion.
minutes to hours for lore.
Dee Dee the other day, I can't remember exactly what she said, but I wrote it down, and she said something like, "Nothing is brief with Adam Lore." Two questions from what you just said.
And by
Would
the way,
you?
Dee Dee, really sweet lady. Really
Oh,
sweet lady.
absolutely, absolutely. So, couple questions in response to what you'd said, because there was a lot there.
Yeah.
Would you consider Jacob's apartment to be, in a sense, anti-escapism?
So Jacob's apartment is a true slice of life story, and when you get a true slice of life, it's not always pretty.
So it's not intentionally anti-escapism, but maybe depicting reality in an honest way.
Yeah.
That's the part that I think I'm missing. It's like you're showing the honest, dark reality of life, but so which leads me to my next question. Somehow you are saying that somehow points to positivity in Christ. There might
I
be
think it
something in the
does.
text itself that I just kind of missed, like what the
So
good guys are saying. That kind of it's like, oh, listen a little more closely
no,
to
no,
the
no. The book itself doesn't point to Christ. Just the
the book itself.
confrontation.
Doesn't.
No, it
Okay.
doesn't. It's not a Christian book. It's a book written by a
Did you
Christian.
write this as an atheist or as a Christian?
Both. It started
Oh,
as an
interesting.
atheist and kind of was edited and revised by a Christian, but I left a lot of it because,
So when you first wrote it, it was as an atheist, and then you just recently revised it as a Christian.
well, the only thing revised were like mainly like plot points, because I realized like as a believer that I think it's actually a stronger book. Like I think that
I'm gonna
I
have to
really
reread it.
think I think because it's showing true reality, I think it is going to point people towards at least the right questions. And that's the thing. I don't like, this is like a Paul idea or whatever, but it's like it's
This
weird, but it's
page
like,
blows me away. The art
thank
on this
you.
page,
Yeah, I definitely like
like
the
this
feathering.
panel especially, like oh my god,
Went a little wild on the feathering.
this is like I don't know if you heard in my review, but this is a perfect panel. There's nothing you could do to make this better. Like
Thank
look at
you.
this, look at these, look at the art. So one thing too is like I find this with a lot of
Does that make
great.
sense though? Like from a
It
like in
actually
a weird
doesn't
way,
make
like,
sense
okay,
to me.
so I guess the point is like, as a non-believer, I liked truth because there's something beautiful about truth, even if it's sad. I can't explain it, but I feel like when we hear truth, we laugh. Like the best comedy is hinged in truth. If it wasn't true, it wouldn't be funny. You hear that all the time.
Mhm.
There's got to be like a semblance of truth, like underlying it. When you
Oh,
see like,
I agree with the importance
yeah.
of truth. Yeah.
So I was a big fan of that. Like I feel like your job as an artist is to depict truth in some way and like frame it, and you're either taking it and kind of playing with it or whatever, but there's always a truth kind of underlying the matter. As a Christian, I more so believe that, because I think that to me, I think that like, so if you listen to like the whole kind of gospel testimony about Christ or whatever, the
Yeah.
whole idea was that Christ's, like, you can't even get to Christ before you face and confront the world as it is. And so like you're not ever going to be in a place, like not you particularly Adam, but like
No, I
this is
understand.
the theory, is like people will not be at a place until they can recognize their own flaws, their own failures, like the hideousness of reality, the fact that like beauty is temporal, the fact that like we're all finite and we're all gonna die. Like these things are things you have to kind of
Oh, wait,
face.
what? We are finite and we're going to die? Like, that's what I
Yeah.
don't understand is I thought that you and I both agreed that we are not finite and we are not going to die.
Well,
Like,
yeah, but like what
the
gets
body
so Adam,
dies.
as somebody who believes that though, what gets you to that belief is looking at the other option, like looking at Jacob's apartment.
So this is like a cautionary tale. Like, this is what depravity looks like and you shouldn't do it. Is that kind of sort of what you're
Well,
saying? I feel like
it's sort of
somehow
like if
fundamentally I'm misunderstanding the whole thing.
it so
Like if we had to go back all the way to the foundational starting point because
so
there's
both
something.
of the characters are chasing purpose, right? And they're finding purpose
Yeah,
in art
yeah.
and purpose in like invented purposes, and at the end
Mm-hmm.
it kind of like winds up being slightly purposeless.
Slightly. I guess that's one way of putting it.
Well, my point is like, it is kind of
It's a treatise on purposelessness,
yeah, and it's
which is
like you
extremely
can even see the
disappointing
characters
and
throughout the book
depressing.
consciously choose choices that aren't necessarily good. Like they choose careers over love, but that's because their invented purpose is like an invented purpose, and that has to take highest standard. Like that's their god. So of course they have to follow that, and of course at the end it doesn't end up well.
See,
And
I
I'm
think
not
that's
saying
what.
like that's the thing. I'm not saying personally, I just want to clarify. I'm not saying there aren't happy non-Christians. I actually think there's a lot of I think probably the happiest people are probably not believers, you know. Because I think a lot of them are
Mm,
surrounded, and I think some of them might claim to be believers because they like to surround themselves with like bubble wrap and Thomas Kincaid paintings and escapist stuff because it's hard to think about the deeper topics
yeah,
that
but I
like you
think
have to come to
when it
like these other greater higher truths.
I think non-believers when it comes to that point when the family member has to pass away or they're in the process of dying, they are not happy. The believers can deal with it and the non-believers are having a real hard time with it.
Well, I mean, I just lost a friend, and it's like I'm seeing that in real time where there's a lot of conversations of people being like, well, it's the circle of life, and like at the end of the day, like the good balances out the bad, and you hear all this stuff, and it's like I even as an atheist, like I knew that was full of shit. Like I lost like one of the things that happened a little bit before I got saved. I don't write about this in two stories. I probably should have, but I lost a friend to like a murder suicide.
Oh
Like
my
her
gosh.
parent killed their entire family and her. And like I remember being at her
Wow.
wake and hearing other friends who were like also atheists at the time. It was just like, well, like I mean, like they lived a good life, like they were this meaningful person. It's all positivity, but it's like a lot of them wouldn't just embrace the fact that like, hey, this just sucks. Like there is no like perfection in this scenario. It just kind of sucks. Like it's
Yeah.
not right. And one of the things I like about kind of deeper philosophies is just accepting like actually it isn't right. It isn't part of like the way things should be. And that might sound delusional to some people and I could understand that, but it's like I
It
I
isn't
sincerely
right. A murder suicide isn't right. Might sound
well,
delusional.
death in itself isn't right. Like death is just not right. Like there's something wrong with death, and
Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think there's any way to make it right, like except possibly
Wait,
like deeper
Josh,
philosophies.
can I ask you something? Because this
Hmm.
is something I may be misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Do you believe that death means that you're dead?
No.
Okay, you don't, but that's you're just so when you're talking about all this,
I
you
mean,
just
I do
mean
think
you
I
mean the
think
physical ordinary realm is what you're talking about.
I think that death in itself, like in our experience here, is
And our
wrong.
experience here in like
There's something
empirical
off
ma-
about it.
the
There's
empirical
something
material world.
there's something off about it. Like it just does not seem right, and yet it is so baked into like the order of things, and
But
it's
you mean
interesting.
but you mean for the empirical material world specifically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But my point is like empirically and materially, there's something off, and we all know it. Like as
Mm-hmm.
humans, like we all know it, and like we rationally can't prove it, but it's like we know it. We just know it inside. Like when something dies, we just know it's wrong. Like we just know it's weird. With like even the fact that like nature dies is like just this off-putting thing, but it's so essential for like the entire structure of this earth. It's almost like the earth is like was structured for something else and then something got broken. It's like it's just to me that is really compelling, and to me that's the sort of thing, that's the sort of conversation that needs to be happening to like
Mm-hmm.
guide people to some sort of philosophy that can bear them through all this chaos. And you don't get there without Jacob's Apartment, you don't get there without Great Gatsby, you don't get there without Charlie Kaufman, you don't get there without looking at the existential void. And I mean, the whole birth of existentialism was made by like I think Sarda, and
Is
like
this
his whole
existential?
purpose, well, it's a branch of existentialism. You know
Okay.
what I mean? I mean, it's definitely got like Jacob as a character is definitely verging on existentialism.
He's in an existential crisis at the very least.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the point
But
being,
this is the thing I think I miss about this book.
but so there's different.
Are you promoting existentialism, or are you showing a
Well, I mean, I don't think
cautionary?
that book is an endorsement of existentialism.
That's the thing, is it comes across as that's why I'm having an issue
But like,
interpreting
does
it.
that book make you want to be an existentialist?
It doesn't make me want to, but it feels like an endorsement of it. In other words, what is happening and being said in this book, I feel like you are promoting, at
But
least at the time.
so I guess the point of it is like, and this is the part that I missed when I was an atheist. And keep in mind, you
Mm.
guys like out there too. I really, I sincerely want to let people know I don't believe in the idea of like witnessing to people. I just don't. I don't think it makes any sense. I don't think it's biblical. I think it's ridiculous. I think even apologetics biblically. Anyhow, my point is, so I'm not trying to convince anyone. I just want to be clear on that. But like, I'm just talking about my own experience, and it's like, and that I am supposed to do, right? Like, talk about my own experience. Um, but it's like, to me, I don't think you can get to the higher level thinking on anything without confronting the existential, which was the whole point Sarda had. He was like the guy he was like pre Nietzsche versions of existentialism. And
Yeah, I
his whole
think.
purpose was
Wait,
him
Sartre was
saying,
before Nietzsche?
I believe, yeah, wasn't he?
I don't know. I thought that Nietzsche was sort of like a proto. Like Nietzsche himself was not an existentialist, but he was sort of a proto existentialist that the existentialists like drew upon.
So
But he was sort
Sarda
of.
is, let's see,
But I'm
Sarda's,
not sure. I don't
I
know that
guess
much
Sarda's a little
philosophy.
later.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Nietzsche came
So
before
Sarda's
him.
like replying to Nietzsche, I think. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyhow, the point is like,
Sartre was the guy that said there's only one question. It's whether you know, or you're not. Right? Is that Sartre?
whether you know,
Whether you in your life, like, I thought
yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah,
Sartre.
yeah.
Okay.
So
I don't
the
want
whole
to get too much
purpose.
into that topic, but I just wanted
So,
to
so the reason
allude to that.
Sarda like was bringing that stuff up was like the idea that like his thing was hedged on the idea of like it really is kind of absurdity, like to like
Okay.
the whole thing Nietzsche was talking about was like bravely inventing sort of a purpose, like confronting the void and inventing a purpose. Like
Yeah. Yes.
you're
Like the
kind of bravely
Superman. Like.
being brave enough to
Like.
do the great or terrible things was like kind of
Yeah.
the rough
Like
idea.
slay the spirit of gravity and just
Hmm.
jump up and fucking fly like a bird.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because the whole point was like that's the brave way to kind of face our existential dilemma. But Sarda, I think, was and who also was like one of the framers of existentialism, and like he had like an interesting take because his whole point was like the whole purpose of the existential crisis is to come to something greater, because at the end of the day, like pretending it is stupid. like pretending is stupid. None of us should pretend. So like either there is something deeper, or you're literally playing pretend, which is ridiculous. And so like what's funny is a lot of people view
Is
Sarda's take as more nihilistic, but ironically his take was nihilistic to get to something way less nihilistic than where Nietzsche's philosophies would end. And so like I do really think that it's important for people to kind of face that kind of reality. I'm not saying like people who are going through hardship shouldn't have escape. I love escapist fiction and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I think we both
hell,
agree
I'm
on that.
working on a book about seances and like Victorian England that's super fun and suspenseful, and
Sure,
it's
yeah.
going to be great. But it's
I think
like,
we both agree though that something like this is a high. I don't know if people like the word higher, but there's a different approach with this type of. You're doing
yeah.
like literature with this.
I think this is a book that's meant to make you think. It's
This
not
isn't
meant to make you feel
commercial
good.
entertainment. This
Yeah,
is
and
like pure literature, pure art.
and again, it's asking you to think. And I mean, the kinds of things that I hope people are going to think after reading this would be something like, what is purpose without love? What is the pursuit of dreams without love? What is it that like causes us to try to fill the absence of someone with someone else? There's a
But
lot of like
Josh,
kind of achy questions that should come out of
let
that
me
book,
ask
but
you a
no
question.
answers.
Where in the book? So this is the thing: is your book shows like the darkness,
Hmm.
but where is the part of the book that like says,
It doesn't give you an answer.
okay, so it doesn't like point you in the direction of, like you have the existential crisis part, and you're saying after existential crisis, it should lead you towards something positive or something higher.
No, I'm not. Like the book's not
Oh,
saying that at all. The book is just leaving you with questions.
no, but what
It's making
you
you
just,
think.
but what you just now were saying is
Hmm.
that, but that's
Well, what
not what
I'm
the.
saying is like why I think books like this are important. Like why when I
Mm,
was writing these characters, like, and you have to realize like this isn't fully autobiographical. Like the most autobiographical I've ever been is two stories, right? And it gets even more autobio and raw like in book two.
mm.
But Jacob's Apartment is highly fictional and then highly not. It's
Like
like
how
it's
much
like
of this is it like half and half, or how
I
much is
kind
it?
of, it's funny because I've answered that a little bit before, but I kind of like the idea of leaving people guessing.
Okay, yeah, because
But
it
I can
feels
say
like
like I'll give a couple. Like okay, so
it
I
feels
did
like
lose my father.
100% of this is real.
Yeah,
Like when you
I
read
did
it,
lose my father
it
to cancer. It was a
feels
little
like
out of
everything
order.
happening is real.
Yeah, I did lose my father to cancer, so that's very real. It was
Okay.
out of order in the sense of I think I had become an atheist prior to losing my father, and it was kind of the reverse with Jacob in this. Um, let me see what else. I guess like some of the childhood stuff is pretty accurate.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah. But it's
That's
like, and
sad.
then even Sarah's childhood stuff is pretty accurate to some people I knew, but not people I dated. Because like Sarah's sort of an amal-
Oh my
amalgam of like
gosh,
three
yeah,
people I
like
knew.
jeez.
But these are all like built from life, but it's a very fictional book, even though it's very confessional and real.
Yeah.
And so
Okay, I totally get that.
it's kind of dancing that line. But the point that I'm saying is like, no, the book is unhappy. It leaves you with questions and no answers. But those questions are so important, and you don't
Wait,
get the answers.
what question am I left with after reading this?
Like, what is the purpose?
Of the book itself?
No, like of life.
Huh. Okay.
Like, what is the cost of losing someone? What is young
But
love
this is
like?
so. This is what I keep kind of getting to this point. Is there a part in the book itself where it's like after all this stuff happens, it sort of invites you to question what is the purpose of life? Are you just saying read the book and that will lead you to asking those questions? Like in
Well,
other
I'm
words, is
not.
there
I,
part
like,
of the plot that
like the book is
invites
just
you?
the book is a slice of life about sorrow, about young love, about lost
Yeah.
love, about broken dreams. Like that's
Yeah.
the theme.
Yes, yes.
It's not a book that wraps itself up with a bow. This is more of like a Lord of the Flies type book. Like Lord of the Flies doesn't end with all the kids getting a moral lesson. Like it just ends with kids getting slaughtered. I mean, it's brutal. It's that those books exist and they're important. I wouldn't tell the writer of Lord of the Flies that they should have some guy step out and go like, not every book has to be an Ayn Randian book, like in the sense of like the way Ayn Rand writes books, they're morality tales that are just her
Yeah, yeah.
philosophy just being preached. That's the
Okay.
shittiest way to write, in my opinion. Like it's
Really?
why,
Well, I mean,
yeah. When I
Ayn
was
Rand. Ayn Rand is Just she writes in very poor.
But like,
but
I
like
feel
you're saying,
like
writing.
Tolkien does a better job. Like, if you are going to do moralistic writing, I think he does a better job of weaving it in. I think C.S. Lewis does better nonfiction, but like his fiction gets a little heavy on that sometimes, and I think that can be a little overbearing sometimes. Although I love Lewis, and I think Lewis is brilliant, but it's like, I think that books like my point is not that my book is not as good as The Great Gatsby. I'm not that full of myself, but that's the angle I'm aiming for. Great Gatsby doesn't tell you what the solution is; it just tells you what the problem is.
Unfortunately, I haven't like everything you're referencing. Unfortunately, I don't know enough.
Great
about
Gatsby's a worthwhile read. I mean, Fitzgerald, like that book will. I mean, it's achingly sad.
I've tried to, but I didn't
there's a
make it
particular part where he's like looking across the pond, and it just describes the light reflecting on, and it's one of the saddest moments I've ever read, and yet it's just utterly beautiful. You know, it's like
so.
I
so the interesting thing
like,
is,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. I'm actually curious what you have.
The thing is, like, this is the thing. I already kind of said this.
Yeah.
I feel like you and Charlie Kaufman figured out something that I'm too young and naive to have realized, and that's why I don't get it. That's why it's like, why would someone make this book? Why would you put so much time and effort, and your artwork, the artwork is so beautiful. How many years of your life did this take?
Like a good maybe 5.
You spent half a decade to say what? That everything's kind of pointless, or look for an answer?
No, I don't think everything's pointless, nor am I saying
well,
that.
I'm
just saying that for those characters.
The book kind of says that.
Well, I mean, the characters definitely make choices that result in that result.
Yeah. Like, that's the sense I come out with, is that is kind of what the message of the book is.
As like purposelessness?
Yes. Well, like more than anything I've ever read or watched.
I mean, there's a purpose.
Like, it's definitely about purposelessness. The book is about purposelessness.
Well, it's about loss. It's about idealism not working out. It's about the ghosts of our childhood haunting us into adulthood, and how I
think
I
might reread this book like 20 times.
Yeah.
I'm like so interested, because I feel like there's something in here that
it's about the journey of the bee.
See, I missed the bee thing. Maybe I gotta just read it more closely.
But it does make you question purpose, for sure.
One thing also, Josh, Hopefully. This isn't, well, I guess this is a criticism.
That's my intent. My intention, by the way, like, if somebody put down this book and was just like, man, I had a great time reading that, I would feel like an utter failure. Like, to me, I was kind of worried your review was going to be more trite, and I don't mean
well, I almost did that just because I didn't want to. I want to promote your stuff. I love your stuff. I love your work, and I appreciate you as a friend. So I was like, how am I going to review this without like? Well, this is the thing that's interesting, though, is I think because there's so much to this.
I don't want you to fluff it, though. Like, if you like, the point being, like, if you really hate it, you can just.
I will fluff the artwork. I definitely will fluff the artwork. Like, it's worth the artwork. Just the detail on the hair, right there, is worth the $15. So
it's funny. There's a few things that you said in your review, and I think you were being silly, like, well, playing it up a little bit.
I might have been silly. I don't know.
But like, so like the sex intro, and it's like, dude, I mean, have you read any book that was like prescribed for like assigned in like a 7th grade classroom? Like, dude, I mean, Lord of the Flies has kids murdering each other. Like,
true, yeah.
You know, again, like I mean, Catcher in the Rye, which I think every kid should read by 16, has so much sexuality and cursing and just like everything. You know, there's a Salinger reference in this, and that's a book that's like usually assigned in 8th grade. So this is definitely not like an R-rated book. Honestly, I'm not opposed to it. I would actually say 2 Stories is way more R-rated. What's funny is this one feels more R-rated. Like, the reason these sex scenes bug you more than like the sex.
It doesn't bug me.
Well, I'm not saying
the sex scenes don't bug me. I think it's a selling point. I think you should tell people, hey guys, you page 1, it's like SEX.
I do like that.
Page 16 and 17 and 18 is XEX. Page 48 and 49 more sex.
I love that you have the sex pages memorized. Adam.
I kind of have like, well, I just read the book, so.
But so the one thing I will say about the sex in it though is it's funny because this book is less exploitative than like a Marvel comic. Like if you think about like what I'm showing of like Sarah, it's less exploitative than your average superhero comic of like her body.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Which is funny that choice to not do that might have cost me my first publisher, which I'm going to make fun of in Two Stories Book 2. I'm literally calling out the old editor from a previous publisher who had picked this up and then dropped it. And I think part of the reason was I was kind of weirded out and refusing to overly sexify the character.
oh,
Anyway.
they were asking you to do that?
Oh yeah, like make her sexier. Not my current publisher. My current publisher would, like that would be hilarious if she did that, because she's like very much not about that kind of thing. So, but it was funny. Like my yeah. Anyhow, I'm gonna make a joke about that editor and call him out by name, in Two Stories Book 2. But anyhow, so but I will say the sex in this book does not feel steamy. It's a very off-putting book, you know.
It comes across like an autobio. It really does. Like
Well,
you
that's
wrote
cool.
this as if it was autobiographical.
Yeah, and
It
parts of
feels
it are.
very real. Like it feels like this is. It's hard to believe that these aren't just real people that had this happen to them exactly as it's written.
Okay, so like I don't know if that's just you being nice, but it's like that's my intent, you know. So
Yeah, I'm just saying
if
that's to me. It comes across as like I'm wondering how much of this is just what happened exactly to Josh.
Yeah, and what's funny is like again like the loss of my father was a real one. A lot of the other stuff is not. Some of it is. And like what's interesting is like the the funny part is because it is fiction though, right? And I told you this when you were sad after you read it, and I was a little concerned, not because I don't think you should be sad. It's just like I also know you struggle with, you know, some of the things I struggle with, and
Yeah.
like we both, like when people struggle with those kind of things, you even mentioned it in your review, which I thought was really insightful, where it's like there are some people who like they take sorrowful music and they're just like, man, this makes me feel better, I'm not alone.
Yes, yes.
And then there's people who take it and are just like, well, that's it. And you're like, no, like that's
For
so,
me, it's like a danger to Elliott Smith is
Yeah.
a life risk. If I start listening to Elliott Smith, it could result in me being in a hospital or something.
And I think if I'm being honest, it varies. I have times where I can be all about Elliott Smith, and then I have times where if I'm like indulging and just listening to Elliott Smith over and over and over and over and over again, maybe I need to watch myself, because you know, like we're all kind of prone to like to different extents, right? It's like a spectrum kind of thing. But
there is also stuff like this in the book, you guys. Like
yeah.
It's like Two Stories where it's like kid stuff and adult stuff, which seems to be kind of your thing, it seems like.
Yeah, I like to, I mean...
Super fun.
Yeah.
Woo! Kaplow! Like, this is like, well, the context of the Kaplow is... Wait a minute. See, I already forgot about that part. What the heck?
So but my intention isn't to like make everybody all depressed and sad, but at the same time it is a depressing and sad story, and like I think stories like that need to exist because I hate Thomas Kincaid paintings. I hate them. I hate trite bullshit. And don't get me wrong, I think that like you can do really important, powerful work for children. This is not a book for children, but is this a book for like 16 or older? Hell yeah. Would I have dug that book as a 16-year-old? Hell yeah, dude. Like when I was 16, I read Death, the High Cost of Living, which is a heavy book, and it's totally fantasy, but it's a heavy book and it deals with heavy themes, and it engaged my teenage mind. Like it was like there was something about the sorrow. It was like a Radiohead album, you know?
That kind of like what you're telling me now kind of makes sense of the past few years. I've kind of talked a little bit about this like magnum opus project I
Mhm.
have, and I feel like because it seems like our philosophies of writing are almost completely antithetical. I have felt like everything I've said about my project, you have a negative reaction to because it's like so opposite of like what you want out of a book.
I don't know if it is a negative thing though, because I think that
Oh,
what
to
you
me,
were
I
just
definitely took it as a like mostly
okay.
like or at least disagreeing with it and criticizing it.
Yeah, I get mixed on what I want out of a book. I think escapism is a good thing, but it's like what
Like if
is
it's
it?
like a Tolkien type, like if I'm doing a Tolkien type thing.
Well, no, I mean like honestly, like fart jokes are funny. You know, you know what I mean. But why are fart jokes funny? Because farts are there's a truth to the fact that farts are funny. They are funny. That like that goes all the way back to like the Decameron. You know, I mean, we've been making fart
I
jokes
think
since the beginning of
I think the
civilization.
first joke recorded is a Sumerian joke
Hmm.
about a wife sitting on someone's lap and farting or something like that.
Oh yeah, and I mean like even some of the humor that like this is a defense of Adam Lore right here, but it's like some of Adam's humor. If you guys are unfamiliar, you should check out Toad Road. It crosses a line of like of what
Common
is
decency.
acceptable and what isn't. But what's
Uh,
funny about it is like people who would look at that like who like humor, I think would enjoy it. And then the funny thing is, if you pick up the Decameron, which was written like what was that like? Do you remember Adam the Decameron? It's like
I
the
don't know what that
1400s
is.
or something.
I don't
Anyhow,
even know.
so the Decameron. I'm gonna just explain this for people who might think like, oh my gosh, the dude made out with a bird. That's disgusting. Okay, so the Decameron. This is like a book written by like monks, right? And it's kind of a saucy monk back in the day. Right? Like this is one of the oldest comedies known to man, right? That's written down, and I highly recommend people pick it up so they understand the history of comedy a little bit. There's a bit in that that's like there's a guy going around to nunneries saying he's the Holy Spirit and impregnating nuns.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This is like one of the oldest comedy stories known to man, and that is like it becomes this whole bit where at first he thinks he's getting away with it, and then it becomes this twist, like a very Roald Dahl adult story twist, where by the end of it, the nuns have sort of taken this man hostage, and so now he's like in this like hellish situation, serving like 50 like very hormonal women who are like after him. So it kind of does a flip so that it kind of twists itself on him. The
Yeah.
the, the first joke in the Decameron is literally a guy trying to escape something and he falls in a vat of poop. And
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh. What?
yeah. So like
This would make a great like comedy. Like just turn it into a comic book that's like hilarious.
yeah, so the Decameron, like this is one of the oldest comedies known to man, and it was like saucy and racy and kind of crossing the line, and like I mean, this, like, dude, like, have people read Shakespeare, who are like freaked out by your book? Where it's like, dude, read Taming of the Shrew. That thing is like that is a brutally saucy book. I don't know. So that's where I'm getting at is like I think people need to grow up a little bit. you
Maybe
know
that's the essence of what it is, Josh.
what do you mean?
Is I have a refusal to grow up, and you have already grown up. So because I refuse to grow up, I can't comprehend this book.
I don't think that I don't think that would be it.
Like you're an
I
adult
was
with a
more talking
job,
about your humor.
but you're an adult with a job and a wife and a child, a career
Yeah, but I mean, you're an
who is
adult, like we're adults.
I think I guess technically, but
But I mean, what is an adult?
I refuse. Like I think the way I think of escapism and fantasy is just more like that of someone who refuses, like a Peter Pan syndrome. I refuse
But what's
to
weird is,
accept it. I refuse to accept what this book is talking about.
yeah,
I don't buy it. I don't believe it. There's something higher. There's something better than this.
I agree with you.
I know you do. So that's why it kind of throws me off. It's like, wait, what? Like, it confuses me too, because it's like, this seems antithetical to what you believe in. But that's what you're writing.
It's foundational to what I believe in. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying.
That's the part I'm missing.
You cannot get to, like, the whole structure of a belief in something beyond can't even be attained truly until you've faced the things that
Until you've
appear.
done this.
You have to, like, this is the hero's journey. You have to actually go and face the void. You have to face the doom.
But
And
this
if you
is
can't
part.
face the,
Isn't
this is
this
the
part?
doom.
Isn't this part of the hero's journey? Just the part of when he's at his lowest low. Like, it's just one section of the hero's journey.
This is his journey.
I gotta
That's
reread the
end.
book.
There's no
I gotta
sequel.
reread the book more closely.
It ends sad. It's a tragedy. It's not a comedy.
I think the entire thing is sad.
That's what I'm saying. It's a tragedy. It's not a comedy.
Okay, it's a tragedy.
This is Hamlet, not Taming of the Shrew. Not that
Maybe
it's actually Hamlet.
Maybe it's that basic. Is that I'm expecting a comedy and it's a tragedy, and I'm misreading.
Yeah, and it doesn't have as much outs as Two Stories, which is funny. I was just talking to my wife about this too, where Two Stories Book 2 is going to be happier and even more disturbing than Two Stories Book 1, which is kind of surprising.
Like, it has both even happier,
Because
and
to
the
get to
happier
the
parts are happier, and the disturbing parts are more disturbing.
Yeah, to get to the happy ending in Two Stories Book 2, you're going to have to go through hell. And
Right.
I've structured it that way because I have a lot of outs in Two Stories Book 1 where it's structured so that, like, the reader is getting like heaviness and relief, and then you know, you'll get, in theory, and this is how writers, well, you know this, Adam, it's like we know what we're doing when we structure these things, right? So my goal is, like, I'm giving you this ebb and flow and a lot of, like, tension and relief. That's
Yeah,
the
sure,
way
yeah.
Two Stories is structured.
Okay.
Jacob's Apartment is a lot more tension. But there are still some points of relief, and then there's a dangled thread of relief that I never give you, which is a mean thing to do as a writer.
So it's mostly the tension part with that much release.
Well, there's a couple reliefs throughout it to keep you going and keep you chasing the carrot that I give you a different carrot.
It does
and
keep
nobody
me
likes that.
like, it does capture my interest.
Yeah.
It does, like, I want to see, like people say, like, you want to see what happens. You want
Yeah.
to turn the page to see what happens next. It definitely achieves that.
Yeah. But
I think it's because I was kind of hoping
ending.
that. I think it's because I was kind of hoping, like, any of the things would have worked out. Like,
No, and it's terrible because I like, this is the horrible thing as a writer. I led you there, like, I gave you hope, and then I
kind of knew from before, because
punched the
you kind of warned me. You're like, oh, I hope, you kind of grit your teeth and say, I hope you like it, and you're like, it's a doomed romance, and
But I like doomed romances. Like, that's the weird thing. I like those books, but I don't like them in a way where, like, there's different kinds of books. Like, there's times where I, like, really want to sit down and read Berlin, and then there's most times when I don't. You know, not that this is Berlin.
I don't know the reference again, unfortunately.
Oh, Berlin by Jason.
But Eternal Sunshine, you've very frequently
Eternal
compared.
Sunshine's- Yeah.
You've compared this to Eternal Sunshine,
Mhm.
which has a dark ending,
Mhm.
but it has, like, a part where it's like, it's not gonna work. We're not gonna be together. We're gonna keep going, and it's gonna get messed up. But that's okay. Like, we're gonna be together anyways, even though we know it's gonna lead to this. It's like, it's never gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like this optimistic observation of how
Yeah, it's a little more optimistic. I mean, Ghost World would be more comparable. Like, the only reason I brought up Eternal Sunshine is, like, the interplay of, like, dreams and reality, but, like, and the fact that their dreams start kind of interacting with each other.
Yeah.
But Ghost World would be more the vibe at the end, where, like, Ghost World doesn't have a happy ending. Like, it's kind of like this guy gets his life ruined. It's like a horrible story. You know?
I'm definitely going to reread it. I'm just going to take some of these things into consideration.
I don't want to convince
Because
you to like it because
Ghost World
again, like I feel like
does
the
end on a
impact it
downer
had
for
on
sure.
yeah, and the impact it had on you, like I hate to say, but it's like I don't want you to take it like to an extent where it like ruins your life or something.
No,
But
no,
it
no. It's not.
definitely
It's not.
the impact it had
It's
on
not
you.
going to do that.
This is the hard part about selling a book like this. It's like Hamlet, right? Like how did Shakespeare? Not that I'm Shakespeare, but like how does Shakespeare sell Hamlet? Where it's like, hey, you guys should watch this play. You're gonna feel like shit for a week afterwards. Like
So you're trying to write like? Have you seen the movie? What is it called? Dancer in the Dark.
yeah, Dancer in the Dark's a really good example. I mean,
So
it's not
you want
this
to
isn't
make
as heavy.
make something like that where it fucking makes you feel depressed.
Yeah, you get the feels. You think about stuff.
It's super interesting because I've had a conversation sort of like this with other people where it's like, I don't know though, because it's interesting to see the way that when you read, do you feel like you are the characters or do you feel like you're
Dude.
watching the characters?
So here's the weird thing. I know it's weird, but like even though I structured it that way, and I told you this on Facebook when we were messaging each other, because when you said like I was sad, like it bummed me out, right? I messaged you and I knew exactly the first thing that was going to bum you out because it bummed me out when I was writing it, and like I knew where it was going, and it still bummed me out because I really I wanted it to end differently too.
Right. So that's the thing I don't understand
couldn't.
is as
The
a
characters-
creator.
It would be so disingenuous if it had ended.
But
the
what
way
if you
I
had?
wanted it to
What
end.
if you decided? What about this? So I think this is where our philosophy is like different. This is what I would have probably done in your situation. It has to end the way it ends, obviously, but I also want it to end the other way. So you have two completely contradictory things that cannot be reconciled,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you have to struggle to figure out a way to reconcile these contradictions.
Unless the purpose is that those contradictions are, and that reconciling doesn't happen. in
Right.
the
So that's the
story.
difference.
It's
Is
a tragedy.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. That's the difference. Is you're not writing a message of hope.
In this book, no, not at all. No.
Yeah.
But it's not a message of doom. It's just a tragedy.
Right.
And it's not like a tragedy like
It's not necessarily praising what has happened.
This isn't Romeo and Juliet level tragedy, although it is structured a little bit based on that. Like you'll notice it's like two different houses, like two polar opposites. Like, there's some things that are like riffing on the Shakespearean thing, but not as dramatically. There's no like warring families, But it's like, yeah, I mean, like Romeo and Juliet, like the purpose of that isn't to be like, oh, you guys should all get in this idealistic young love and kill yourselves. Like that's not the message people should
I wish
get
I had
from
more
Romeo
of my
and Juliet.
projects finished so I could like talk to you about them. But okay, so I'm gonna get a little bit into this. So
Okay,
after I finish Toad,
And by the way, I want to step away for like 2 seconds, but then I want to give you the floor. In the sense.
Oh, sure, yeah,
I've been
yeah.
doing a lot of talking, and I told you this on Facebook too, but to be honest, I'm just excited to talk about my book with somebody who's read it. Like it's exciting
Yeah.
to do, and so like if I'm over.
well, I've been
it's just
doing a
like-
lot of talking about your book that you were listening to too. So you're kind of reacting to
Yeah.
what I have been saying for
No, and
hours about your book.
And I want to be clear, you guys should watch Adam's, like, as long as it's the full one, you guys should watch his review because it's really insightful, it's concise, and honestly, he makes a valid point. And I do want to tell people this isn't a happy book. Like it might have happy moments. There might be little
This is
captures
another
of
thing, Josh,
beauty.
is I never
Yeah.
really, like you promote your book so much, I didn't get the impression that you're like, you guys, this is going to be a downer. But I think maybe that was intentional because you don't want to try to, how do you sell a downer?
But I do say it's a doomed romance.
Yeah, so you gave me that piece of, you gave me that warning.
Yeah, and like...
And you did compare it to two films that have pretty fucking, sorry for the F, pretty...
No, you can use that for...
Pretty, like, downer endings.
Yeah.
So I should have expected a downer ending.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like I know it's weird, but it's like the only concern I had was like obviously your well-being. Like I don't want it to affect your
No.
well-being.
It's that we're
But
not risking
when
something like
you were
that.
saying, "Hey, this really bummed me out," and then when you were describing why it bummed you out a little bit, I know it's horrible to say, but I'm like in the background, like, yes, I did it.
This
I
isn't like
did it.
Elliott Smith level bummed me out, like a danger to my mental health. Is
That's the
like,
part where I'm not saying yes, I did it. But the
yeah,
way
yeah,
you
I
described,
know that.
I
Yeah,
realized that, like, I know
I
it's
would let
weird.
you know if it's because really, honestly, when you
Yeah,
first, I want to let you go in a second, but when you first started working on two stories,
yeah.
it was like triggering level where I couldn't deal with it for a
Yeah, and I
long time.
remember I told you kind of at the time, like, you know,
Like I didn't even
don't,
really
you don't,
barely know you or meet you because I just couldn't handle
yeah, yeah. And
the suicide parts.
I think we did talk about that at the time, and I think you were kind of feeling bad about it. It was like, don't feel bad, man. Like, you gotta, like, your health comes first. Like,
So
and that goes for
this was
anything.
not
You know?
anything. This is not like triggering it or anything like that. It's just
Yeah,
like it's more like on a philosophical level. Why would Josh make? Why would you make these choices at the end? Like I just don't get it. Like
because
and but this is the thing is like I said, I feel like you understand something higher than you and Charlie Kaufman get something on a higher level than what I'm the
or
one missing something. I
or we're
don't get it.
evil. Like, there's a
Right.
couple
But
options.
it
Like, we
seems
might be
so
evil.
unlikely that you guys are evil or stupid. So I feel like I am missing something
Well, I
major
can
here.
be pretty stupid, but oh man, uh, yeah, I want to hear your story ideas, but I will just say, like, my main crux of it is I believe, like, if even if I take my Christian views out of it, right?
Mm, mm.
I have always believed that there is beauty in sadness in art, there's beauty in humor in art, there's
Yeah.
beauty in, like, ugliness, like, purely depicted, like Crime
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Punishment. I would say is not like a Crime and Punishment isn't a tragedy. It's like it's a dissection of, like, just disgustingness of human beings. But it's not. But I wouldn't say. I don't think Jacobs is really, like, dissecting disgustingness. I mean, there's some bad memories from their childhoods, but I don't think it's like
Yeah.
disgustingness, like, to the level of, like, Crime and Punishment, where it's like saying, like, what would it take to kind of take, like, a person who's moral and make them like a murderer, you know, like that kind of thing. That's like more of like this weird, just ethical, like, oh, it's just a gross feeling, right? But it's still a great book. And I think there's beauty in it, even though it's like not beautiful. Like that's my point, is like I think that the artist's job is to kind of depict these things, and sometimes it's to depict a painting that's uncomfortable. Like sometimes discomfort is the point, and like this
Right, right.
book is that. This book is like, you know, that's just the aim of it. But I want to hear about your book, but I need to disappear for
You,
2 seconds
okay,
to
so
do that.
while you're taking a quick break, I want to make an ironic. I want to promote my web comic, which is called The
Oh,
Ventriloquist.
no, no, no! You shouldn't ironically promote that. You
Well,
should
no, I'm
talk.
saying it. No, I'm saying
Okay,
it's ironic that I'm talking about it because it's so dark and
dude.
so morbid, and the message is so negative.
Before you get
It's
into it,
just pure depressing events.
I want to say that it is it is one of the, it's a very interesting webcomic, and I don't mean that in like the belittling interesting kind of, you
Yeah,
know, how
yeah.
people are like, oh, that's no, it's like sincerely fascinating. And I know people have commented on this before, but just what the AI does to, even, like, I think the best of your intentions with the story, it always, like, takes it to darkness.
Yeah,
Like
it
the AI
does.
wants it twisted, and it.
Yes.
But I have to say, there's also something fun about it in this, like, kind of creepy, like, horror show kind of way.
Yeah.
But it the
It's
fact
also
that you,
beautiful.
yes, but the fact that you picked the ventriloquist was a really smart call, because it allows for a lot of that. So yeah, why don't you talk about that to people, and then I'll be right back. So okay.
All right, cool. So I was trying to show the ventriloquist here. I think it's not showing. Let me see. Okay. Hey, Josh, are you still there? Shit. Okay, I think it's showing. I hope it's displaying. So it's interesting because what I'm my some of my criticisms towards Josh's book, it doesn't. It's almost like hypocritical of what I'm doing because my book that I'm doing is so just pure negativity. It's so morbid. It's so dark. It's so creepy. There's no positive ending. There's no. Well, I haven't completed it yet, so I might cheat and make a positive ending. But I think that's interesting because I think that's what Josh and I were kind of like. This is a tragedy, and there's not really anything fun and warm about it. I mean, it's like the fun and warm parts are unfair temporary things that get taken away from you, and maybe it seems positive at the time, but because it's taken away later, it's a form of torture. It's agonizing. um so I guess I don't know, but I don't know. I'm yeah, I don't know. But anyways, this is my web comic, which is AI generated. It's all like made with DALL-E Mini and DALL-E 2, and it's pretty pessimistic and negative and really dark and morbid and creepy.
Yeah, Adam, it really bums me out.
Does it bum you out?
No, I love it.
There's something about this that doesn't bum me out, but when I show people, they're like, "Dude, that's really creepy."
I like the creepiness of it. It's got like a very, it's just unsettling, but
it is unsettling, yes.
But I mean, I'm also working on a book that's about like seances right now. So like later on that are historically, actually happened. But I'm excited about drawing like the creepy, like lurid, dark stuff. It's fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of creepy and lurid, I highly recommend it. It's really interesting. I also like that it's psychologically very interesting. Like it's just it hits a lot of points of creepiness, but like in a very,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
about mental illness or something.
Well, it also just it really uses AI to in a really fascinating way because there's something unhuman about it too.
Yes.
Even though it's being directed by a human, it's gonna go its own way. It's interesting.
What reminds me of, like, if someone with schizophrenia was doing a weird drawing or something. So it lends itself to doing a story about someone with insanity.
Yeah.
And
And
also
and by the way, I want to tell people like that if you're ever bored and you want to like Google some just beautiful but like just fascinating artwork, like look up like there's been like schizophrenic painters and stuff in the past,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they tend to have. I've actually used this as an aesthetic before on pages, inspired by schizophrenic art, like. And I don't mean that in like the belittling, like split personality way. I mean like the real thing.
Yeah,
Where there's a thing called horror vacui, where like people with schizophrenia often can't leave empty spaces, and like any empty space just drives them nuts, like with art, and so they will fill like an entire page with just like endless like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like ornamentation and sketching and drawing, and it just has to fill every empty space where it gets absurd. Like they're filling the empty space in the empty space. And I actually got inspired by some of that when I was in graduate school. And so there's a couple pages of 2 stories where it's like a playground and there's just like a million kids on there. And that's super influenced by like the horror vacui thing, because I was like, I'm not going to leave any empty space. I'm just going to like doodle it up. Or like the scene where there's like waves, and I highlight the waves and they're swirling and I get all noodly about it, and just it has to be because I kind of love that aesthetic. I just think there's something like almost like Victorian about it,
Dude, I gotta read. This is the thing. I have to reread this book like 20 times now because I'm actually like fascinated by this book now.
Oh well, I'm not trying to sell you on it.
No. Well, this is the thing. Is like
actually, I really want to say, Adam, I appreciate that you gave a real review.
Yeah.
That you gave your real opinion, and honestly, I got more out of that as an artist than I think I would have from like a fluffed up review. It was really nice. It was nice.
Well, I hope that it leads to a little bit of intrigue where it's like, what's the big deal? Like, why did Adam have such a strong reaction to this book? Maybe I should check it out and see what it's all about. Because like I'm becoming more and more fascinated by this book. because I feel, again, like I said, like there's something I'm missing that you guys get about
I agree with
not just
your
about writing, not just
yeah.
about the book, but there's something you guys understand about life and the human condition, that you guys are wiser than me, that my friend Jeff figured out, that you have figured out, that Charlie Kaufman has figured out, that I'm too young and naive and and grasping onto my childhood and refusing to grow up, that I just am completely oblivious to.
But I kind of think there's an adultness to refusing to give up childhood. Like there's a certain amount of growing up that like obviously like I got to raise my kid to like survive, right? So like
Mm.
there's things like he was having trouble with homework recently.
Yeah.
And he came home from school and like he's finally hit that age where he was telling us this tale of his teacher being so evil. And you know, he's not good enough at lying to where we couldn't figure out like, oh wait, you just didn't want to do your homework in
Mm.
class and you were pretty much smarting off to your teacher and then you got in trouble. And it was like we had to kind of explain to him and kind of create this like illusion, which is kind of an illusion that like we're all in cahoots. It was like I had to depict him like if you misbehave in class, you realize we talk to your teacher. Like we know what she knows.
Oh wow.
And it's like it's true though cuz like we're going to reach out and like it's like now if the teacher were out of line, we'd be like totally just at the school just ripping this person apart. But it's like it was just obvious knowing our son, having seen him misbehave here when he has. It was like, okay, I know what you were up to, you know?
Yeah.
So there's some growing up that he's got to do, but still, like I think I talked about this on a stream. I think one of the most heartbreaking things I've read was like in Peter Pan. Have you read the book Peter Pan?
No, I haven't. Like every classic thing that everyone in the world is supposed to have read, I haven't read.
That's okay.
I've tried. I've
You've read
tried
like
to
some
read.
heavy philosophy that I haven't even
Well, yeah,
touched,
and I've read like a lot of like
and like
quantum physics
mathematics.
and
Yeah,
like cosmology and
yeah. So
infinity
don't undersell
and
your
like higher
intelligence,
dimensions
Adam.
and stuff. But
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
just am not familiar with a lot of the references.
No, I mean, but anyhow, so in Peter Pan, like, because you've at least seen like the Disney movie, right? Peter
Yeah, yeah.
Pan. Yeah, okay. So in the book, it's like this startling thing. I hadn't really read it till like, gosh, I think I was reading it to Ben when he was like a newborn, you know, and I was like, I haven't read this. I've never read it. So anyhow, there's this part where it talks about the dad like opening like Tinkerbell staying in the drawer or something because it's never opened because the father put his dreams in there. And the mom tells their kids that. She's like, your father never opens that drawer because every time he does, it gets harder and harder to close it again. And he has to keep it closed so that you guys can exist, pretty much, which is
Oh,
brutal.
weird.
That's like the crappiest thing you can tell your kids. But I think there was some truth to that, that like some adults get so shut off to like their childhood or their joy or like their imagination where I think it gets kind of dumb. And it's like those adults that like are like, you know, become the like, well, hell, some of the neighbors on my street. And that's not to belittle my neighbors, but it's like there's a lot of people I live near that like their whole life is about their lawn looking better than their neighbor's
Right.
lawn. And like,
Right.
it's like the keeping up with the Joneses, like tiny boxes, you know, on the hillside song kind of thing. And it's like, that's not the kind of growing up I think anyone should do because that's not really growing up. That's actually just kind of inverting and becoming like a weird kid again in just a different way, you know? But yeah, I mean, I like the heavy stuff. I don't know. I liked the dark stuff as a kid. I felt like when I was a kid, I don't know if you ever had this, but I remember watching. How did you feel? Okay, real quick. How did you feel about Captain Planet as a kid when you'd watch it?
Stupid, corny bullshit, fake,
Yeah.
corporate, fake, plastic, fake message. It's not real. It's gross.
Now,
It's all forced. It's not
did you feel that way as an adult or as a kid?
both.
Yeah. So that's
Like
the thing.
I don't think there was a period where like there was not a period where it was like I liked Captain Planet. I mean,
Yeah,
the theme song to Captain Planet is very catchy.
it is really catchy
That's
for
about as
sure.
far as my appreciation for Captain Planet has
And
gone.
I think why any of us watched it was just like you had limited options, and at least it was animated, you know.
I
But it
don't think
was
I
like,
ever watched it.
oh, I would watch it if I was like bored, but
It's like if the
it,
Care Bears came on or something. I'm not gonna fucking watch that.
yeah,
Like,
it was horrible. I mean, I remember watching episodes, but like I think it was just because I'd flipped channels and like nothing else was on that was animated, and so I was like, okay, I
yeah,
guess I'll watch this stupid thing. Like, but my point is like even as a kid, like stuff that's insincere and like for kids in quotes, we never liked like you know. But then there's stuff that's like cool for kids, like why did I like Transformers? And I was thinking about like Transformers the movie like killed Optimus Prime. It was like brutal. It's like this traumatizing memory from my childhood where I watched Optimus Prime go gray and then he didn't come back. Like the
um,
movie ended and I was like, what? Like what? It was like it was this earth-shattering moment, but it made it have so much weight. And I remember as an adult watching like the remake or whatever by what's his name who does like crazy cuts where you can't tell what's happening in fight sequence. Do you remember the director Transformers dude? Well, anyhow, I think maybe Adam stepped away for a second. So the director of the Transformers movie, he made this like just like
sorry, I stepped away for a second. Is that Michael Bay?
yeah, that's it, Michael Bay. So like I feel like that movie missed all the weight of that because like again, the Transformers movie, like the
Philip got it.
cheesy, corny animated movie left this psychological impact on me. And it was rad. It was amazing. It was sad. It was tragic. It was one of the first times I bawled in a movie theater.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean, I was crying because, like, literally, I thought they had just killed Optimus Prime. You know, I remember having that moment when I was in junior high, reading Lord of the Rings before it had become a movie. I read
Oh yeah, I
Lord of the
remember you
Rings.
telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to that Gandalf death scene, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh," because I thought he was just dead, and I hadn't like read a bunch of stuff that had cop outs that had people just come back, so I didn't
Okay,
expect
but
him to come back.
okay, so that's a good question. Is do you think that there's a way, a tasteful, graceful way of doing a resurrection without it being a cop out, where it's planned ahead? It's not just a cheat. It's about resurrection. You know what I mean?
Well,
This if the
that's what I'm
story is
saying. Lord of the
about
Rings would be a good example. Yeah.
yeah. So okay,
Like
so
where it's
okay.
all leading there. I mean, you have Gandalf the Gray, like all there's like a lot of little indicators that are like, oh
Like
yeah,
just
this is
if
going to
just
be
at the
about
end he stuck it on there, that would be like a cheap cop out.
yeah, totally.
But he spent decades and decades and decades thinking about his story and planning the whole damn thing out, and
Yeah. He was
he
also
did.
like, I mean, you know, Tolkien's a weird guy. Like he was an unusual writer in that sense, you know. But he was also just an unusually brilliant guy. I mean, he was like what, like a genius when it came to linguistics and taught at
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Oxford and stuff. I mean, yeah. Was he at
absolutely.
Oxford or Cambridge? I always forget. I think it was
I
Oxford.
I don't know.
Whatever. Anyhow, he was buddies with C.S. Lewis. They were like
So, but
palling around.
there is a tasteful, graceful way to do bringing someone back to life,
Oh,
and
dude.
it
And when it's
uplifts
done
you. It's
tastefully,
uplifting, and it's like the
it
best thing ever.
yeah, and that's okay. So like
That's what
Jacob's
I want to
apartment,
do.
yeah, Jacob's apartment is a tragedy, right?
Obviously, that's
Um,
not Jacob's apartment. That's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
his-
Two Stories is like that. Like Two Stories is this hellish journey, and it's based. I'm totally just doing a Campbell like hero's journey to the point where like the chapter titles are telling you where it's at in the plot point. You know,
Okay, yeah.
so it's like, you know, when that gets to resolution, it's gonna have put you through such a rough ride that it should feel. I'm hoping if I structured it right, like it should be like the most just this profound joy that people feel when they finish.
Then
That's my
that's what.
goal
So that's your goal. That's your end goal, and that's
with
what
Two
you believe
Stories.
in. But that's not what
Well, no,
Jacob's
for Two
apartment is all
Stories,
about.
but Two Stories is a hero's journey, and Jacob's apartment is a tragedy.
Okay, that
So
makes more sense.
they're just different. Like they're all in the same wheelhouse. They're just different genres, you know.
Okay.
but I think both are equally valuable. Like just like I think a comedy is valuable. It's like there's the different arcs, you know. It's like I don't know, but I have to say, like I really, I hope I'm not. Oh man, to anybody out there, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to convince Adam to like my book, because I'm not. I actually, I think that
I feel
I was pleased.
I
I was
don't really
pleased.
feel like you're trying to convince me to like your
Good,
book,
good, good.
which is kind of funny. Like, shouldn't that? You would think that that would be what
No, I was so
an
pleased
artist
with your
or an
reaction.
author would do.
I was honestly so pleased because if you're writing it, like, could you imagine? Okay, just imagine, like, and I'm not Shakespeare at all, but it's like if Shakespeare had written Hamlet, right, and everybody goes to that play and then they walk out smiling, like, he's gonna
Hmm.
feel like an utter failure as a playwright. Like, Hamlet's not supposed to make you happy.
Yeah, maybe I just forgot like one of the most first basic like tenets of writing is just
I don't, I
there's
don't, I don't know. Or maybe
like
I failed at it. You know, there's that possibility too. Like I might have
mm,
failed to pin it, but I felt pretty happy with your response. Other than the like, obviously I'm not happy if it like I don't want anyone to take it so bad that it like impacts like the rest of their life in a negative way. It's like I just, but if people read it and they're like, man, that's sad. Like, yeah, that's
well, I
yeah.
don't think it was sad. It felt there was a word you kept using. Um, like meaninglessness or pointlessness or something. There was a term that you kept using.
Hmm.
I can't remember what it was.
I think like they're like purposeless.
Purposelessness.
Yeah.
That is what I was left with the feeling that I felt like you were telling me there is no purpose to life. This is how everything happens. This is just how it's going to be.
Hmm.
There's no purpose. There's no meaning.
That's what it was
Everything.
for those characters. Yeah, for sure.
That's what it was for the characters, but I felt like you, as an author, putting those characters in the story,
There
were
are
in a way telling me that
so
that
there
was the
are some
message.
there are some hints that it goes a little beyond that. Like
There, yeah, so you that's something you
yeah.
alluded to that like there's hints that
But they're
that's
not
not the
giving you an
message.
answer, but there's definitely hints that like for instance, like as the writer of it, like I'm aware that Jacob is making some very dumb decisions. He's being very myopic in certain areas, right? And it
Yeah,
becomes really clear when like it's like his whole like yeah, I guess I just don't want to give away the big. There's a big twist
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of meaningful, and it's kind of a send up to like my father. Actually, even though it's not an actual memory of my father, it's like representative of like the kind of father I had, which was a good dad, you know.
Mm.
And it's kind of like probably the most heartwarming moment in the book, so that's why I don't want to give it away because that is probably the 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 light in the book.
Heartwarming. are,
Yeah.
are you sure that that part is in my copy of the book? A heartwarming section.
Well, it's a twist because it's like Jacob is trying to kind of fill a certain
Well,
void. He's
don't
dreaming
be
about
careful.
it.
Yeah, don't
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah. So it's
reveal
leading
the.
somewhere, and then there's a bit of a twist. And but but yeah, it's a dark book. It's a heavy book. Don't buy the book if you're not ready for something dark. But also, don't buy the book if you're just looking for like goth dark because it's not that. Although goth dark can
It's
be
like
really fun.
existential. Like,
Yeah,
what is meaning? What is the purpose? What is
I
it's
like
suggest.
I like your suggestion of reading it in tandem with Frank's comic. I actually think that's a
Well,
really
yeah,
good idea.
that was what happened. Is so okay. So I got two
No, but
books,
like
and
that is a
I've
perfect
been
pairing.
trying to like focus on reading, and I couldn't. I had to go to a special place to read, and I was like, first I'll read. I didn't know how much time I had, so I was like, first I'll read Frank's because it's gonna be really short. And I was like, well, fuck it. I'll read Josh's first, and I hope I don't get kicked out of this place. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here. And then by the time I got to the end of this damn thing, which was masterful, this is a great, exuberant work of literature and art. But the feeling it left me with, I was so relieved for the antidote, which was Captain Goggles and Mask Woman. and it was just the total opposite of your book, and it was what I wanted and what I needed, and it was so simple
And
and
playful
positive and
and
playful and
fun.
happy, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, let's go on an adventure. Whoosh. Okay, there's an adventure. It just magically pops out of the sky. An adventure magically pops out, and then like it's just it's
Yeah.
like this is the antidote.
Yeah. I agree. But like, okay.
But
Here's
you don't
another.
want an antidote. You don't. You want them. You want Werner Herzog. You want to leave them lingering with the feeling
Oh
that
my gosh,
life has no purpose.
you keep mentioning people who like I totally love. Like you were like, this is like late Charlie Kaufman stuff, which I can't
Yeah.
stand, and I'm like, I want to make stuff like that. And then you're saying like like literally my favorite documentary maker. I
Mm.
can't not
Like all the
like that.
stuff that
But I will
I
tell you, I this is a weird thing. There was a point in this story where the characters, because it is fiction, kind of
mm,
directed themselves. And
yeah.
this was a book that I had a rough outline for, but I didn't actually know how I was going to end it.
Okay.
And so there was a point where I got halfway through the book and I realized the ending had to be the ending it is. And it really bummed me out for like 2 months. I was
I'm
depressed
glad.
about it as I was working on it. I was
I'm
like,
glad that you
that
put
is
that
so
much.
sad that, like, to me, because I cared about these characters and I had them like, and you're drawing these characters and they're like having a cute date at a
That's why this
like,
is like a higher work of art. This is higher literature because it's not entertainment. It's the real fucking deal.
oh,
And you gave it the real. You sat there and thought about these characters like real life people, and you're like, I figured out that it has to end this way. It sucks that it ends this way, but that's the way it has to be. And you
yeah,
still did it, and you spent 5 years of your life making it happen,
I
which
had
is
to.
already unbearable. To do an unbearable story for the sake of art and literature above cheap plastic entertainment.
Is that weird?
It makes sense, but it's like where I'm at personally, and I think it's because I grasp onto my childhood, and this is the thing, is I'm starting with the books that I started doing as a kid, and then the next ideas and the next ideas. So I'm
Yeah,
progressing from the stuff that I started writing in 1996 as a kid
yeah.
to the later stuff and the later stuff, and I'm holding on to my childhood. And I want, if I was writing a book about someone dying, I would figure out a way to tastefully, artfully, magically make them not only come back to life, but live forever, and everyone lives forever, and and death can't happen anymore. Like they just figured out how that, oh, there was this weird stupid thing, and death isn't even a real thing. Like because I have to, like, I guess you guys like grew up and matured and figured out it's like this is how fucking sucky life really actually is.
But like,
And I
it
like can't
it's so
stand it. I
funny.
can't deal with it.
I can't either. I mean,
Or I
obviously,
think another thing is like
I wrote
as an
two
artist,
stories about that. You know, like,
I
yeah,
feel like as an artist, because we have control, we can
yeah,
change. Like you do, this is reality. But the thing I like about fantasy, and this isn't fantasy, so it's different to compare it. But what I like about fantasy is you actually can say, okay, something terrible in my life has happened. I want to write a story about it, but I'm going to change it to what I wish could have happened instead, and
yeah.
uplift myself and uplift the readers. Obviously, that's not what you're doing with Jacob's Apartment, but that's like, I guess I don't know why I went into
I
this
do love that
with
about
those
fantasy. I
types
agree.
of expectations.
No, I
I,
love that though, and I think that is, again, I think there's different functions, you know, and you know what's weird though, Adam? I think also some of it might be you being like kind of an artist in the sense that, and when I said kind of, anytime I qualify, just understand that that's how I talk all the time. I
yeah,
qualify
no,
everything.
I didn't take that as
I always say kind of about everything. Like I could see like the resurrection tomorrow and be like, that was kind of amazing, you know.
yeah, I understand what you mean by kind of
Yeah, yeah.
something slightly different.
Well, you've Yeah, you're familiar with me enough to know, but that's also for like the listeners if they're like, "Wow, kind of, what a dick thing to say," you know. Um,
Like kind of amazing is
yeah,
almost higher than just plain amazing.
yeah, but I do think that you uh, get in the zone with whatever projects you're working on, and I think right now you are
Mm,
kind of in the zone of the current iteration, like the current issue that you're on of Toad Road. But it's funny because from discussions with you, I know Toad Road's going to go deeper too. And what's funny
yes.
is you start with some more surface level comedy,
Yes.
and it's the easy comedy, and it's not all easy comedy. There's you start twisting it a bit, but
Well,
then
I
it.
started like I was a kid. That was what I thought of when I was just improvising something as I started drawing, and that's what came out. And I wanted to
But
preserve it.
But I love that even Toad Road starts going in this kind of meta thing where it starts and you're kind of doing bits, like
Yeah.
in a comedy club, and it starts
Yes.
getting very Kaufman-esque as it goes on, where you're like
Uh,
wrestling women, and it's like, wait a minute, is that even appropriate? And then like it starts being like a thing where it's like, is he even joking? Like this is just crossing all sorts of lines, and I
exactly.
love
Yes.
I
Crossing the line of common decency.
but I
Yes.
think that's harder. Like it's easier to do if that's all you're doing. Like shock jock stuff is
No, but
easy.
that's the thing I love about Toad Road. Okay, so my goal with
But I
Toad
like that
Road.
you're doing that dance.
This is my goal with Toad Road. I think I've explained this to you though. Toad Road Comics. The point is not just to do South Park.
Yeah.
There's moments of South Park type stuff.
Which
There's
by the
moments.
way, credit to
There's
South Park. Like Trey
I
Parker and
love
Matt
no,
Stone are
they're
hilarious.
great with what they
Yeah.
do, and they still are doing it great for how many? I mean, they've been doing it for like
Yeah,
three
yeah, yeah.
decades or something. So I'm
And
not just not.
Basketball is a great movie. I'm just
I
saying
like
if you
South
guys are
Park,
ever bored.
but
Yeah.
I don't want mine to be wall to wall
Yeah.
R rated.
Yeah.
I want it to be Calvin and Hobbes most of the time, and then suddenly there's a serial killer, suddenly there's a rape, suddenly there's South Park, and then it's like back to like Beavis and Butthead, and then it's back to just Calvin and Hobbes. Most
Yeah.
of the times it's Calvin and Hobbes, maybe a little, it's Ren and Stimpy level, and then it's like anal rape in prison. You know, it's like if you just if just the whole thing was R rated
Yeah.
murders, it would be a thing. That would be a thing. That would be at Piss Score or something. You know, that would be
Yeah.
South Park. If you just do wall to wall. And as it progresses, it might get to a point where like one of the issues is just completely insane if I go that far. But that's the thing I like about it is this comic is rated G,
Yeah.
PG 13, R, and X, and
Yeah.
it shifts between them so that you're not just used to one thing. And when it goes to R and X, it's a surprise.
Yeah, and I love the fact that like I think in theory, from what I've seen and what you've described, it's like if you pull it off right, it's gonna just hit a level that like no one's perfectly comfortable with, but that's the point. Like, and I think that
Yeah, I like the fact that it makes people uncomfortable that the guy is like sucking on the tongue of the bird, which to me
and
is completely harmless.
well,
To
and
me,
I
in my
think
mind, as a kid, I'm like,
yeah.
and as a teenager, and as an adult, it's like, good, I'm doing G-rated stuff. I'm doing a G-rated comic. I can't
I
get
mean,
over that.
that is
And then
G-rated,
people are like,
but it's also absurd and gross.
yeah,
but
but
in
people
a
are like
funny way. It's like
shocked
gross
and
out.
disgusted by it. Like, I even still am. It's like I sort of get it, and I laugh about it, but I still don't really get it. It's like I'm still too much of a child to understand why it's inappropriate.
But I kind of love that. I guess my point is
It's
that
sexually suggestive, I guess. Is
yeah,
what
and I think part of why it's funny is it's kind of the last thing you'd expect, and then and I think that's the funniest part of it. But when you re-look at it, and this is the genius of like the way you write it. I think it's a little more intentional than you let on, but it's like the way you pace it out, you give every indication that's what's going to go down.
well, this is the thing. You say it's the least
But
thing you expect.
you don't
but
expect it, so you
to
don't
me,
need all
it
the
seems like the most obvious thing that could happen.
Well, the way you structure it makes it that. But what's hilarious to me, that one, because that's one of the first ones in there.
Yeah, it is.
And when I first read it, I remember.
I think that's the introduction to
Yeah.
Albin.
when I first read it, I like a lot of people was like, "What?" And then I thought it was
Second
hilarious.
introduction, yeah.
But then when I like it made me step back and look at the page, and I realized you were pointing us in that direction the whole time. It's just you wouldn't think that, so you like it's like it's like a double misdirect, which I think is hilarious, where it's like the way you structured it, it's like that of course that logically is going to happen because you're giving every indication that's going to happen, but it's the last thing you'd think would happen, so there's that double take, and I love it. I think doing that is a little harder than just doing the pure shock humor, and
Yeah.
I think it's a fine dance, but it's like it's a worthy endeavor, in comedy.
I
and
don't
if you
think I would
pull it
ever do
off-
something just for the sake of shock.
Yeah.
It has to have a clever
Well, because
play on words,
like a good
or
Python bit, like
it has to
like,
be.
like
It has to be a joke. There has to be something to it, a logic to
Life
it.
of Brian wouldn't be as funny if it was just like heretical and sacrilegious or whatever. It's funny because it crosses the line, but then it's also kind of strangely like very much honoring the material it's riffing on, and like it's not just a bag on religion, but it is, but it isn't, but it is, and that's why it's funny. That's why it's so good. Whereas, like, you can watch another comedian who's doing the same riff on religion, and it's not as funny, even if you don't believe the religion, because you're just like, I don't know, this is kind of mean.
Yeah.
But, like, I think anybody with their wits about them would watch, like, Life of Brian and be like, that's not a mean movie. It's just funny. It's very funny, but it does that line, which is a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
So
that's what I
think,
like.
Yeah.
Well, you have to realize too.
Comedy.
So a lot of Toad Road, the early Toad Road material, I was in school writing it, so I had to write the line or else I'd get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I sometimes did get in trouble because I'm drawing it in class and passing it around. People are laughing, and then I have to go to the principal's office.
That's
so
so
I literally was like, there was like,
Yeah.
it's like in Ren and Stimpy where there were certain things they weren't allowed to do because the executives wouldn't let them, which I think made it sort of brilliant.
I think so too, because I actually feel like when they had like the reins taken off, it actually kind of got kind of boring.
Yeah.
Whereas like
So
when
I
they were
gotta-
writing the line,
So
like
that's
when
a
it was
lesson.
like "Don't whiz on the electric fence" era, that was great because that was like crossing every line they could, but they couldn't. It was funny because of that.
So you got to be
knew they were
careful.
messing.
The Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon is a warning not to just be completely unleashed and go crazy.
Yeah.
So if I do get to like super extreme stuff, I got to be careful that it's not just self-indulgent bullshit.
Yeah, and I would almost like, well, I don't want to tell you how to write it, but it's like I would almost do the polarities completely. So like where it's like if it goes like way extreme, the next one should be like the sweetest, like most innocent, just absurdly cute, like almost maybe there's not even a joke in it. It's just like a sweet moment or something. And so it's like
Ted washing the dishes or something. There's no real
exactly
joke to that. It's just he's having a
It's
ball
just-
washing the dishes.
Yeah, he's just in the moment, kind of enjoying his life, and it's like, oh, how cute, Ted. And then, like, 5 minutes later, it's like you're prepped for like, apple cancer, which isn't that racy either.
Pretty tame, yeah.
I still love the apple cancer bit though.
Well, I'm
Actually,
really.
all the apple bits are great. Like,
I think I might have an
X-ray's
Apple
great.
thing that I didn't realize. I noticed themes that I didn't intentionally put in there, and people put it out. It's like, why is he always like kissing birds and cactuses? And
yeah,
it's like that wasn't
what is the name
conscious.
of this? The thin character is like my favorite. I think.
Wiener Boy.
Yeah, because he's
His name
like,
is also Albin Lorp, which is
Yeah.
as a nickname that my brother would jokingly call me instead of Adam Lorp, Albin Lorp.
Albin Lorp is hilarious.
So
Well, I like
Albin.
him because you have him like as almost like a. I don't know if he's semi-autobiographical. I doubt
A little
it.
bit, yeah.
I'm sure there's.
He's
a
sort
little
of a stock character, semi-autobiographical.
bit. He's like your George Costanza.
I don't know Seinfeld enough, but he's
Okay.
he's almost like my dirty side and my angry side, and
Yeah.
also just a stock character where if I come up with a sort of broad sort of just a joke in general,
Yeah.
a lot of times I can have him do it, where Ted is a much more specific character that I
Yeah.
can't just put him in a joke. The jokes have to be, and the situations have to be specific to Ted. Wiener Boy or Albin, I can stick him in a lot of situations that it's just sort of an everyman a lot of times.
I think I like him
He's an everyman, but he's also sexually attracted to animals, and he has an anger issue.
That's okay. So what I find funny about him is so when I was a kid and I watched cartoons, like Mickey Mouse was funny,
Yeah.
Goofy was hilarious, but there was nothing funnier than like Donald Duck just getting super pissed off. Like it was
Yeah,
like
so he's so
there's
out.
just nothing beyond
So
funny.
Wiener Boy
Like
is Mickey Mouse in that you could put Mickey Mouse in any situation,
yeah,
and Donald Duck
yeah.
because he has the anger thing.
But I like that you have him kind of much like that. Like that's why I was saying the George Costanza, because like in Seinfeld, like the character that has the most hubris is George Costanza, where it's like he'll be the guy who's like he'll be kind of egotistical, or he'll like be very like cocky and kind of bold, and then he'll also be the first to just like lose his mind with anger, and
Okay.
often that losing his mind will kind of get him into deep trouble of some kind.
Yeah.
So
Like, did you see this one? Like he has to go pee really bad.
yeah, I remember that one.
So this is
I
just
like that subverting of the expectation.
just about. Well, yeah, that's the joke. But just about anyone. This could have been written for anyone, basically.
Yeah.
You just need a stock person here to do the joke. So this
Yeah.
is just an idea I wrote. Actually, it was an idea for a comedy video, but that's out. So I can use him as just a character to get some ideas across. This is not specific to his character at all. So sometimes he's just like a generic stock character to do my jokes, you know.
Yeah. I forget who was on your stream recently, but somebody was saying that you should, these things would translate so well to animation.
Yeah, yeah.
I totally agree, although I love them the way they are.
Well, I was just talking to an animator and asking him if I could hire him to do some to promote my comics, but his rates are just beyond what I can afford. So I might just get some. Really, what I just need to do is just get some animation programs on my computer and just do it, because I can animate. I just don't have the stuff right now on this computer, you know.
Yeah.
But
That
I've
would
been
be
wanting
cool.
to do an animated, for example, like it would be like Ted saying, "Oh, hello, welcome to my comic book," blah blah blah. Like that would be one, and then I really have been wanting for a long time to animate. Let me show you the G-rated one, because that one doesn't have nipples in it.
I still think the bird would be hilarious.
Well, that would be great, but that would take a really long time to do. But this one, for example, this would be really easy to do a simple,
Yeah.
limited animation of. Right?
I don't know if you want to give away that bit, but I'm trying to remember that one, and I remember it being very funny. Oh, I remember. I do remember.
Like, really, you don't need much. It's
Yeah.
already just kind of there.
Because
Like,
his whole
hand-
bit, his whole bit was like wanting to time travel and go back, and then like he goes
Yeah, it's a
way
real
far
time
back,
machine.
and he's like, "Yay!"
Well, he goes back to when he was a fetus.
Which is also funny.
Doesn't that
and
make
also
sense
has
that, like,
some existential humor?
Yeah,
to
it kind of makes you think, like, well, I guess, yeah, technically, if you went back to, like, if you're born in 1981, that's what you're going to look like. But the funny thing is that he's, like, excited about it.
Yeah, and also just the cartooning's great. Like, look at that
Yeah.
little fetus's expression. He's
So
stoked.
one of my plans is to probably try to do this. Probably, I don't know. It's like I've been too slow on it, but this is my master plan. Very soon, maybe even like the next time I talk to you, Josh.
Yeah.
Totoro Comics #2 will be complete. It will be
Hell
it
yeah.
will be submitted to printers, and it will be submitted to publishers. It will be all we're doing is waiting for them to process it for print on demand, and it's
Yeah.
available like tonight or tomorrow, like very very soon. Once I finish that, this is what I want to do. I have Totoro Comics #1. I have Totoro Comics #2. I want to put together a nice thick 32 plus 16, however much that is, page sort of deluxe comic book called Totoro Comics Deluxe. And that is going to be the main thing I'm going to be promoting. And by that time, boom, I'll have some animation. Boom, I'll go on the street and hand it out to people and get their on the street reactions and run down the street like Tom Green, like a lunatic, like, hey, you got to buy my comic, like Matthew Lesko or something. And I'm planning to do all those things. I'm just too far behind on Toad Road 2.
Oh my gosh, Adam, I just thought of like the most viral thing you could do, and it would piss off Corey, but I think it would be hilarious. I don't know if this would piss off Corey because he's got a sense.
Well, I don't want to intentionally hurt Kurt. I don't want to. I don't.
No, it wouldn't piss off Corey. I don't think. Here's what you should do, Adam, and you don't have to do this, but it's a funny. I just want people to visualize this.
Like a parody of Shades or something.
Well, no, not directly talking to Corey. So, on your last video, you were showing a review and very hilariously had the Book of Mormon, like in it, and not just the Book of Mormon, but like the legit Book of Mormon, like with all the books.
Yeah, the Pearl of Great Price and all that stuff.
Which, by the way, are like an interesting read. Like I read the full Book of Mormon. I haven't read.
Oh,
the
cool!
Other two.
I haven't read like the Book of Moses and Book of Abraham yet, but it sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, the one that's interesting is like the Book of the Dead, where it's like fake Egyptian.
Yeah,
really
I think that's the Book of Abraham.
Yeah, so that's great. Like, just check out the hieroglyphics.
Just like having my stack of other books sitting here.
What my joke was going to be that you were saying that you've been having conversations with Mormons. What would be a hilarious video, which you should not do, but it's a funny premise, would be like you show them like you look at the Book of Mormon and then you give them copies of Toad Road, the non-censored one.
I give them Mormons.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? And get like Mormon missionaries' takes on the uncensored Toad Road.
Well, I have shown them. I have shown them the family version, and they like it a lot. Actually, like I've shown multiple Latter-day Saints, and they're encouraging of it. And I've kind of tried to explain to them there's not that much of a message in this issue yet, but the overall philosophy of Ted being positive and he doesn't let his disabilities go down and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it would be. I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't actually do that, but it's a funny thought of like you guys exchanging and you.
Maybe I could get like a fake version where it's the family version with the red cover on it, so it looks like it's the bad one.
That's true. But anyhow, so that was just a thought, but not a practice, but just a thought. Okay, I'm gonna disappear. Oh my gosh, it's already 2. I gotta wrap because I gotta go to sleep. But I do appreciate hanging out. And did we not hit anything? Was there anything big that we didn't address? I mean, there's a lot. I feel like you and I could talk for like eternity. It's too fun.
Yeah, well, there were a couple major things I want to talk to you about, but we can talk about it next time. I did want to talk to you about, maybe in private might be better, about once I've done, I think I'm going to issue 5 of Toad Road. Yeah. For at least my first chunk of books. That doesn't mean I'm going to completely stop. But after issue 4 or 5, I have an science fiction action adventure story that I think you would really like in terms of the morality and the plot structure, because it's kind of its own custom plot structure. We were talking about this a little bit on Facebook, but anyways, that's something I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about. And I feel like I'm close enough to it now that I'm just going to probably debut. I'm just going to start showing it now, because I think the next 3 issues of Toad Road will go so fast in black and white that it's like I'm close enough to the next book that I can just start showing what I'm working on, and it's going to be fun and exciting to show you guys. I can talk about it.
I just realized also this might help sell it too, but it's like I should mention to people that like Toad Road is like the one that's not for kids does cross lines that a lot of people may not be okay with, because it does. We were talking about it dancing those lines.
It's not that bad, but
now there is a kid-friendly version that's like that, is good for pretty much anyone, right?
It's family friendly, so meaning like the movie E.T. is family friendly, but it still has a joke about maybe something a little
maybe like there's still a kid calling another one like penis breath or something like
well, there's no
in fact,
there isn't anything
but there's nothing
there's not anything like that. But this is like more PG. This isn't G rated.
Yeah.
But 10-year-old kids can read this,
Yes. And then there's the one I recommend, which, can you put that one up?
This is the uncensored. It says very clearly, "Sorry, not for kids."
Yeah.
I wanted to make it very clear.
And obviously, don't get this for your kids, but I will say, you guys should support what Adam's doing. And also, he's been on a roll lately. So, like, the cool thing is when you finish it, like, realize it's not going to be too long till issue 2, right? And these might be limited, so check them out. But again, proceed with caution because it's not safe humor, but it's also not like it's not tasteless.
Yeah, this is like you're watching. Like you got to realize this is like HBO.
Yes.
If this was a TV show, it would have to be on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
a lot of the time, it just looks like Nickelodeon or something.
Yep. I love it.
Basically, ToadRoadComics.com is where you can get it.
Mm-hmm. And it's very shocking. So go check out the shockingness.
I guess it's shocking. Looking at clouds, washing the dishes.
If there's washing dishes, there's cloud watching.
It's almost like some of it's like preschool level. Like it's just nothing.
It's so good. I really do enjoy it, and I like the playfulness of your cartooning and like the movement. It's just really good. So I recommend it. And yeah, and then also I also will say pick up Jacob's Apartment. It is not fun. It is not a fun book.
But the first page does have XEX on it. It is fun in that regard.
It's a fair point. I love it. All right, with that we'll close. Thanks, Adam. That was good. All right, have a good one, guys. Oh, Adam Lorer on YouTube. Make sure you guys check it out and check out his original review. It's really good. And yeah.